motion to enter into a revenue support agreement with the Lehigh and Northampton Transportation Authority, or LANTA, to implement a Mock Chunk Lake Beach bus route that will serve the communities of Jim Thorpe, Lansford, Summit Hill, and Nesquehoning on 14 consecutive Saturdays commencing June 3rd, 2023, and concluding with the September 2, 2023 Labor Day weekend. The cost of the service prior to fare collections and other potential revenue generating offsets is $4,167.24.
I'd move to approve and then ask if there's a second for discussion.
Second for discussion.
Brandon, could you bring in AJ via Zoom, please? Hi, AJ, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. AJ, we just made the motion, second it for discussion. I want to bring you in to talk about what was discussed and the mitigation steps that are being proposed based upon the concerns that were raised last week at the meeting, which then we brought back up for reconsideration after the changes that you're recommending in regards to the concerns raised. Yep.
So I'm happy to talk about any of those, and as mentioned last week, we're open to making any sort of policy changes to make this as safe as possible for everybody.
Yeah.
So as mentioned last week, we're officially 12 and older, and we have drivers prepped on that to make sure that no one under the age of 12 gets on board the bus. Drivers are encouraged and required, actually, if anybody appears under 12, to verify age and deny service if anyone under the age of 12 attempts to board a bus. So they're allowed to ask for any form of ID for that. I'm not sure if there were any other questions or concerns.
Let's check with Commissioner Ahner and see if he has any other issues or concerns that he needs to address.
The only thing, I mean, when I brought up last week was like the ID was the big thing for me. I see you're trying to make things happen, and I think this is a good thing. I'm not against it, but I see, like, even on the news last night, I know Commissioner Lukasevich was on, and I listen to the people, our constituents, and they're not settled on putting kids on a bus without supervision. And that's sort of where I'm at. I mean, I'd like to see an ID thing. And I mean, there was a comment last week that bus drivers from the schools let kids off, and they don't. When I talked to the bus company, they don't. They have to have written permission either to the school or either from the parent. And this is something that is going to be on the weekends where we have our highest admission. And I want to make sure that these kids are safe. And I'm just not settled on it yet. No. Where we're at, and I understand your public transportation, and children can get on the bus wherever they want. They can get off of the bus wherever they want. And I think, like I said before, it was titled whatever it was, bus to the park. They can get off because it is considered public transportation. I don't think there's anything stopping a child that wants to get off. If they would get on in Summit Hill, they could get off in Lansford. And I don't think there's any checks when they get to the park. currently, we have 2 lifeguards. I talked to the park director yesterday, and we have 2 lifeguards, and we should have 4 to properly operate, and we should have a full complement of 10 to operate properly. And I think, for me, I would like to make the park safe before we start shipping people there. I mean, that's just my opinion, and there are a lot of other opinions out there, but I'm just sticking with that. I mean, the way I understand, we have two other lifeguards that are going through training. They will probably not be certified before the park opens. So what are we gonna do with 2 or 3? And yes, there's a way to stop the bus if the park is closed, but there's really no, I just don't see it, and the kids get dropped off there. To me, how do we know they're going home at night? How do we know somebody's picking them up? How do we know they're not going home with somebody else that they really don't know? And that's my concern. I think it's a great idea to get them to the park, get them out. And I think I'll go with the comment that the lady had last night. She likes the idea of families. So do I, and I like the kids getting there if they would have supervision. And I just don't see how this is gonna work, and I don't need anything to happen, because, you know, you see things in Allentown, we see things all over the country, and how they operate is not the way that we operate. I'm a commissioner from Carbon County, and I'm concerned about this. And if there's something, like I said, if we have the sheriff here, we can do IDs for the kids. There's so many ways that we can make this safe. And like I said, right now, we're gonna be shipping somebody there and possibly not even have lifeguards. And then when there aren't lifeguards there, what do we do when it's swim on your own? And it still goes back to what I said, the ID. I have a nephew that's 9 years old, and he's looks like he could be 15, 16 years old. And I hear that, yes, we can check IDs, but is it gonna be done? To me, it should be required. And what happens when they get to the park, and they're responsible for the money when they get to the park? What happens if they get on the bus and are okayed for the bus and they don't have the $2 to pay at the park, whatever they do? I think there has to be something else more put in place. And like I said, I'm not against this, and I think we're just rushing into it too much before we know the outcome. And I think it's a great idea. And like I said, I'm just not settled on it. I would be willing to table it again, or we put it to a vote. I would not vote yes for it. I think everybody can see that. But voting no for this, I don't think it should stop, you know, but I mean, it's a great thing. And you're different than what our busing is, and I think we're used to what is happening in our county. You know, you get to Allentown, 5-year-old kids or whatever can get on the bus because that's their transportation to school, you know. Here it's a little bit different. This is something new to us, and I would love to see more enhanced areas of our transportation done, but I think we have to have a policy in place, and I don't think we ever even checked into our insurance carriers on what they even think about this. You know, where are we covered? Are you covered? And I think before we do a contract, there's some things that have to be settled with me. And that's all I have to say.
Sure, and I'm happy to address those concerns. 2 things I would add. The way it's structured is drivers are required to check for any form of age verification. So that can include, if there's a separate form of ID, an ID, and if the county wants to print specific IDs for children of the beach, that would be included in age verification. Our drivers are the same drivers every week, and they will know these riders. And then the last point in the current policy is that all children ride at the discretion of the parents or guardians. So parents and guardians are welcome to submit, you know, my child only goes to these stops, and the driver can meet those. That's the way the policy is structured. You know, we've tested that in other areas, and that we've added the policy to Carbon at the request here. We're feeling pretty confident in the safety of children from that perspective. in terms of fare payment, I'm not quite sure I understand the concern for not having the fare.
I'm just saying when they get to the park, if they pay on the bus to get there, what's ensuring them that they're gonna have the $2 or whatever to pay to get into the park? I don't think it's free to get into the park unless we would have no lifeguards. And then that's another situation.
I'm not sure how we could address that. And
Well,
that's-
I don't think you can. I think it's on our end that we have to have a policy of our own. And I said, this is something that, we have to look at all angles before we step into it. And I said, I'm just not happy with, and I said, I go out in the public, I'm up in different parts of the county, and I have not said or heard anybody that said, that they don't think it's a good idea, but their second comment is they just don't like kids unattended. And I'm not going back to the Donny Park thing, where Donny Park wants kids at 15 years old to be supervised. That's a little bit different. They have cameras and they have a different system, but that's Donny Park. But like I said, I'm a county commissioner from Carbon County, and I'm concerned about our kids from Carbon County.
Well, and the good thing with potential park closure is that the schedule is structured so that there is a return bus 20 minutes later for each trip. So if anybody gets to the park and there's an issue, that driver will be at the park again 20 minutes later and can return them back to where they started.
And is there gonna be a list of who you took there?
There is not a list, but
Exactly.
if a parent or guardian provides instructions for that driver, they can be attentive to that, absolutely.
You could take 20 kids there and 14 of them could possibly come back. That's the scenario I'm looking at. If this is to get them to and from the park, and like I said, at the schools, they give a note that they're getting off at the grandmother. If they have something to the bus driver, that there's 5 of them getting picked up, by their aunt or uncle or whatever it is, that's a little bit of a different story. And I said, I'm just not settled on it yet.
So if you'd go to Philadelphia, ride SEPTA. You'd go to Washington DC, ride WMATA. Go to Boston, the MTA, Chicago CTA, San Francisco, BART. Go to Harrisburg, and I'm talking to the public, right, and those who are watching us here. What's the age requirement in those metropolitan areas to ride a bus 24/7 or at any time they're operating? There is no minimum age requirement to ride a bus. Children all over this country ride buses, public transportation, every single day, to include Saturdays and Sundays. I haven't seen, let's require an ID to get on a bus for someone who could be 17 or 18 years old, but we won't require that when you go to the polls to elect. But the fact is, this issue is about those individuals in these communities having access to Mock Chunk Lake Park. The average median income, Carbon County, is $59,000 a year. What do you think the median income is in Nesquehoning, Summit Hill, and Lansford? I'll tell you, in Lansford, it's $20,000 less. So what does that mean? More likely that you have less access to high-quality outdoor recreational opportunities, such as Mock Chunk Lake Park. You don't have a community pool in Lansford, in Jim Thorpe, in Nesquehoning, or in Summit Hill. Again, so your opportunities to have a family experience, reinforce the family as a unit, we're gonna limit because we won't accept a certain level of risk. Life is full of risk, right? You take steps to mitigate risk. The Lanta in Northampton and Lehigh County has an excellent record. AJ, are there any incidences associated with abduction, abuse of children in Lehigh or Northampton in regards to riding the transit system there?
No, not from any transit vehicles. We have supported with abduction cases using our cameras on board buses that were unrelated to our bus. Cameras provide safety on the streets by a bus rolling by, but no, not on board or from any vehicles.
Okay. All right, so we have precedents of being able to safely transport children actually below 12. What's the minimum age for Lehigh Northampton Transit for someone to ride unaccompanied by an adult or guardian?
Well,
12. That is now, right? Not for the beach bus. I'm talking for the Lanta system, not Carbon Transit.
for Lanta system, our age is 12.
12.
It's 12. This is
Right, and we raised it, we brought it up to 12 here in Carbon County based upon our request. Is that correct?
correct.
Yeah, all right. Just like I will tell you what we made the decision at our park to also increase the age of unaccompanied. Unaccompanied, just 2 weeks ago, could have been younger than 12 and actually been unaccompanied at Mock Chunk Lake Park. So we've taken appropriate and necessary steps to safeguard individuals who would use this system to have a high-quality outdoor recreational experience. We got to keep kicking the can down the road. There's 101 days of summer. We just took away the opportunity last week for family and youth to visit Mock Chunk Lake Park, low-cost outdoor recreational experience with transportation provided. All right, now we've just lost another week. And I'll tell you what's going to happen here. It's going to end up being Labor Day, and we're still going to be talking about mitigating risk. Life is risky, right? You have to accept a certain level of risk. That's all I have. End of
Well,
discussion.
and I
Oh,
can
go
add
ahead,
to
Jim.
that, I can personally vouch that, I've been riding the bus by myself since I was 5. In Milwaukee, they had a 5 and under policy. And my parents put me on the city bus to go to school each day because it's safer with the driver. It's safer than walking, and it's even safer than driving. There is documents of buses being just generally safer. But to the concern, our Atlanta has liability coverage, general liability coverage for any incidents. To the question of coverage, up to $3 million. So there is already coverage. There isn't any additional need for coverage from the county. That's part of the RSA agreement structure. It doesn't put any additional liability on the county there. That liability comes entirely to Atlanta.
So I would call upon my colleague to lay out a point paper of the specific asks so that next week we don't return here and again, that goal line seemingly keeps moving to the right along a timeline. So I would ask my colleague to lay out a specific point paper with the issues to be addressed. They can forward those to Lanta and the Parks and Rec Commission, or at least the Park Director, to see if we can alleviate those concerns.
And I think all my concerns are the one that I have every week. How are we addressing somebody getting off of the bus and understand, do the parents always know they're putting the kid on Summit Hill and he's not even making it to the park? I think we have to address something. We do have issues at the park. We do have the sheriff's department going out there on the weekends because that is the highest amount of, I can't say issues, but we get an influx from Beltsville Park. So I think, and like I said, I'm not against this. I think we have to look at the safety, and we look at the safety no matter where we're at. If it's in our buildings, we make sure there's a sheriff's deputy there. We're doing different things. And I go back to it again. I'm not a commissioner of Philadelphia. I'm not a commissioner of another county. I'm a commissioner of Carbon County. And I just feel this is not in place. And I think I've been telling AJ, what can we put in place, or can the park board come up with something that there is a way that when they get there, they have to sign. And I said, the big concern is, what if you take 20 kids there and only 10 go back? What happened to them other 10? And it could be on a day that we don't have no lifeguards. Where do they go? They're gonna walk around the camping area. They're gonna say, wow, look at all the campers, or look at the tents. I think, and I agree with Chris, I think the kids are more responsible, but then I said, I look at the drug and alcohol issues we have, a lot of it is in our middle schools. I mean, this is the age group that is from that 10 to 15 years old, 10 to 14. And I just have mixed feelings about this, of not having the kids supervised. So-
I do have just kind of a question regarding beach access, because our beach stop is beyond the fair gates. So our driver would know if the beach is closed. I thought the beach was open this entire time, and it sounds like the concern is when the lifeguard isn't there. Do people still pay to access the beach when a lifeguard's not there?
When there's less than two, when we can't provide coverage in at least one of the 3 swimming areas, there is no fee to get in. It is swim at your own risk. We simply keep a lifeguard at the lifeguard station. And then obviously, there's intermittent patrols by the rangers throughout the park. But swim at your own risk at no fee.
Okay, because our driver goes through that beach gate to access the beach stop, and it can easily be the case that riding at the parent's discretion, the parent can state if there is a fee, return the child home, and the driver would go to Jim Thorpe and bring the child right back to Sunnydale or Nescahoning. That's part of that parental discretion clause that the driver has to follow.
Well, that's a policy that you can work on till next week.
I mean, that's a
Or
policy
we
that's,
can.
that's included.
Yeah, that we can, or,
The
yeah.
policies there written to allow the parent to make that decision of whatever they want. So that's up to the parent to decide if they want to not let a child off if there's no gate fee.
okay.
Thank you, AJ.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, but it was for discussion. Do we have,
Well, it was seconded, then we went into discussion.
And do we
Yeah, so
want
now
to table
the
this
vote.
or not?
No, take it to a vote, right?
Okay.
It's, because that's the point we're at.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
okay, so it's for approval. Mr. Honor?
No.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.